Hey fam, welcome to another episode of Good, Bad, and Ugly with Jose. We're on episode 4. Today we have the pleasure of talking to Stefanie, my good friend, and she's going to tell us a little bit about private money lending, the good, bad, and ugly, what you should look for, what she looks for, what she's lending to people. So, Stefanie, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
Perfect. Well, first of all, Jose, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure, and I am so glad that I have met you over the last 6, 7 months and gotten to know you. So, as far as private money lending, so a little bit of background. Years ago, my husband and I were in real estate, and when I say years ago, I'm talking like 20 or 2006, 7, and 8. And for those of you that have been around, you remember that period of time.
Yes, we do.
Um, we were super active, buying creatively, doing short sales. And when the market tanked, we decided to sit out for a while. And that while ended up becoming a long while. So, probably about 2 years ago, we jumped into the private money space and formed our company, CPI Transactions. And through CPI transactions, we have been able to fund several real estate projects for great borrowers. We've also been able to pull in what we call funding partners. So, people that are looking to earn double digit returns secured by real estate to kind of join this venture with us. And so, that's kind of how we formed our company. We lend when we can, when we have funds in house, but when we don't, we have a great funding partner network that we're able to place their funds for them, secure it with a lien against the property, and ensure that they're making great returns. So, I know Jose, you asked kind of what we look for. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you and I, right? We're trying to find that deal to work
Yep.
together with. I've presented you with several deals to give you opportunities, and one of the nice things, the problems that you have, right? Nice problems to have is you're over inundated with opportunities to lend on. So,
Yes.
um, with all these opportunities, obviously you need to find a way to either weed them out because not every deal is a good deal. So, what
Correct.
is it that when you're presented with an opportunity? What are some of the maybe quick red flags that you see, or what's a red flag for you that says that's not something I want to lend on, or um, maybe you turn around and go back to the potential borrower and say, if you can renegotiate the deal to this, I
Mhm.
would be able to help you. So kind of give that type of
Yeah,
scenario.
let me do that. Let me kind of walk through what our process is when we get a deal in to evaluate, and then I can kind of share some of the things that kind of turn us off. So, first and foremost, we look at the numbers of the deal or the project. So we want to see, we want to see the property address so that we can go ahead and do some searching and kind of gather information about the property, the area, things like that. So we need to know the property address. We want to know what you're purchasing it for, so that your purchase price. We want to know what the um, after repair value is. So we want to know once this property is in pristine condition, how much is it worth? If you are planning on doing work on the property, we want to know what is your scope of work and budget. We also want to know, what properties are you comparing this to so that we can get a good feel for, you know, are these comparable properties? Are they really something that can be used for determining that ARV? We also kind of want to evaluate the current condition of the property. So we definitely want to see current photos. So once we have that, and if you're borrowing and you're using like a hard money lender for your first lien position, we also want to see that term sheet. So we want to know, what are they charging you? How much are you pulling from them? And once we have those numbers, we'll go ahead and run them through an evaluator that we have that will give us a really quick yes or no.
Is
And
this the
so
one
that
that your husband created?
it is. So, my husband Ian Blackburn is my partner, and he's typically behind the scenes, but he does a lot of the pieces that help things move along. And one of them is a really quick deal evaluator that allows us, usually within, once we have the information, like 5 to 10 minutes to take a look at it. And it's like, yep, no, this is a hard pass, or no, this may work, if some of the numbers are altered. And when I say altered, it could be, can you get a lower purchase price? Can you do a better job on your rehab budget? So we run it through that. That's our first step. And then our next step is, we want to evaluate the borrower. So you may have a great deal, but as a borrower, you do not have a good credibility package. So we look at past experience. I mean, we have made the decision that we're not going to find funding or fund anyone that does not have any experience at all. We have found a couple of people that look great, no experience. So we have worked on pairing them up with somebody that does have experience so they can joint venture, get that credibility built. So in that credibility kit, what we'll look for is, when I say experience, we want to see your past HUDs. So we want to see proof that you've actually done deals and made money. We had one borrower came to us and he gave us like 3 HUDs and he lost money on all of his projects. So needless to say, that was a red flag, and we passed. But we want to see that. We want to know your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Um, we want to know what your exit strategy is, and we look at that in the numbers first. But if your exit strategy is to refi, we often ask for financial statements too, because we want to know that yes, you can qualify for a refi. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a drink real quick.
Nope, you're good. So while you're doing that, before we go any further, because I like to make sure that everybody that my audience hopefully is newbies, people maybe new to investing,
Right.
to maybe the very wise accredited investor, right? So earlier you were talking about ARV, after repair value.
Right.
What does that actually mean? So because I know what it means, right? But some people that may be watching this may not understand what after repair value means. I mean, it's kind of self,
It's
but kind of like explain to them how you would say, okay, what is and what will be, kind of thing, so they understand what that term means.
For me, when I look at it, is if this property was in top condition, what would it be worth on the MLS? And that's the multi-listing service. So, and that can be subjective sometimes, as you pointed out, and sometimes it can be really hard to determine what that is, because we've had some areas where properties are not selling very fast or very often. Like one neighborhood was a very desirable neighborhood and nobody moved, so there wasn't a lot of properties to compare it to.
Right.
And so sometimes that's difficult. We have
So how
reached out.
far back would you go,
I mean,
ideally?
I it's a good question. So honestly, we like to stay within 3 to 6 months,
Okay.
because that is very current. I mean, if you go to a year, the market can shift. I mean, a lot of us have seen some shifts in the market right now, as leading up to the election. Now that we're after the election, there's changes and people are a little uncertain. So can be a very difficult thing to get those values. If we have trouble, a couple of things we have done is we've actually called agents in the area as well to get their
Okay.
opinion. We've looked at the trends of, the city, how many people are moving in, how many people are moving out, days on market, um, things like that, just to try to get a good idea. I mean, we use several different tools too. I mean, everyone knows Zillow. We look at Zillow. We use PropWire. We use a few others and really try to compare them. And there's been times that we've had a borrower give us comps and we're like, these are not valid comps, because say the subject property may be built in the 1940s and their comps are like 1990. Yeah, and it's like, or brand new. I had somebody that was a brand new like rebuild. I'm like, we can't use this. Or stick versus brick, or so you have to really evaluate that. And
So there's an art to comping, is what you're trying to say,
there
right?
is an art to comping. I always hope that we hit it on the that we hit it right and we don't make a mistake. But it is something that, yes, you are very correct. There is a very much art to comping on that.
Yeah, for me, when I comp, I try to stay no further than half a mile, preferably a
Yes.
quarter mile within the same
Yes.
neighborhood. Um, and then, of course, like you were saying, brick to stick, or
Mhm.
a multi-story building to compare it to a ranch. You know,
100%. Yeah. There's
so
there's so many, and
totally different.
one thing early on, we had somebody come to us and I was like, this just doesn't look right. And when you say, same neighborhood, that's huge, but also what side of the cross street. So I mean, you could have same neighborhood, but in a busy street, and one be on one side and one on the other, and it totally changes it. So yes, art to comping is something that I think is a skill that everybody always has to reevaluate and make sure they're hitting it. And you can make mistakes. I mean, but it's
Sure.
something that you have to be careful. So when we land, we look at that. Um, and then, like I said, we really dive into the borrower. I mean, when we meet a borrower and start working with them for the first time, I mentioned, we look at their HUDs, we find out about them, um, references if they have them, especially if they've borrowed private money before. If they have references, we definitely want to call them. We do a lot of deep Google searches too and social media searches just to see if there's anything that we can uncover. And, we use a couple tools. One tool is Ben Verified. It's not the greatest, but it does pull some data. So we can kind of check that. I mean, we had one borrower and we actually identified that somebody had filed a lawsuit on him
Oh wow.
like within the week that we met him, and he's like, "Oh my gosh," he says, "I had no idea," he says, "Can you send me that?" And, it ended up being something frivolous, and everything that we uncovered, we asked him about it, and he could go forward, and so, after doing that and talking through it, and he ended up being one of the borrowers that we decided, yes, we would move forward based on everything that we had. But you have to do that. You have to really evaluate. Once we've done our initial dig deep, feel comfortable to move to the next step, then we always do a Zoom meet and greet with our new borrowers so that we can see them on camera, kind of get that feel for them. 'Cause sometimes you pick up things and sometimes you get that, like, I don't want to work with this person. And
Right.
we really try to build good relationships with our borrowers so that, we can communicate well and they know that we're here to help them. However, we are here to protect our funding partners' investment. And so that's our
And yours.
and mine, yes. I mean, it is that's the part of it. I mean, we really strive to protect everybody and, treat everyone that we work with, treat their money as if it's our own. And so when we do bring in a funding partner, we make sure that they are secured in the deal. And the way we do that is, we do a joint venture agreement that outlines, what everyone's role is and certain things and how things will be handled. But we also do a promissory note, deed of trust or mortgage, depending on the state. We also do a personal guarantee. And so we make
That's
sure that they
huge.
have those. It is, I mean, I always like the personal guarantee, asking for it from our borrowers, for our funding partners. The key that everybody brings up is, if they have no assets to go after that, it may not matter, but we still get it. Most of the time we have verified that they actually have something that we could go after if need be.
Right.
And knock on wood, we haven't had to do that yet. So I'm hoping we don't.
And knowing the laws locally are also
Yeah.
a plus.
Yes. So there's different things. I mean, there's each state has a different foreclosure process. So understanding that is huge. We have decided that there are a couple states that we won't seek funding for. Right now, that's New York and California. So we avoid those. But we have found funding for many borrowers in several different states at this time. And we're based in Colorado, so we have done Colorado. We've done Kansas. We've done Texas. We've done Indiana. I'm trying to think here where else. We've done Maryland, done Phoenix or Arizona. Um, there's a couple more I'm missing. But yeah,
You get the
we've done
gist.
a decent
Yeah, a
amount.
couple
So
too.
yeah, so but like I said, New York and California are on our stay away from list at this time.
So when you, I guess, because I mean you're in a lot of communities, so that's kind of you get referrals. So when somebody decides they want to try to acquire funding from you, what does that process look like? I mean, I know what your
Mm,
process is, but on the borrower side, how do
right.
they initiate the process to
Typically,
borrow?
what they'll do is we have an intake form on our website, and we're always improving that intake process. How can we make it better for us and our borrowers? So in there, we ask them to submit information about their project. So obviously their name, email, phone number, LLC, property address, purchase price, how much it's going to be worth afterwards, their repairs, anything they can tell us about it. We often ask for them to upload, their scope of work and a few other items there. So then we'll review it. We'll run it through our deal evaluator and then, kind of do some initial information. If it passes that, then we'll ask them for some information on their LLC and things that we would put in their credibility kit. And then
Real
we have
quick
the call.
before I forget because I'm getting old. So say LLC. What if this is a new investor and they have not formed an entity yet? Would you still lend to them?
At this time, we are not lending to anyone outside of an LLC, and the reason is there's too many potential issues of it being, personal, and then that puts us into Dodd-Frank and some other things. So we have had people submit things asking for help with purchasing their residence or saving their personal home, and
Right.
it's just not something that we'll do. I think that anyone that does, they're putting themselves in a
I have a higher
situation.
risk tolerance than you do.
Yes, much higher risk tolerance. I don't wanna do that. I mean,
Right.
I have helped people out of foreclosure situations before, but we would never let them stay in that property. We would help them find something else because there's just too many things that could go wrong on both
Sure.
sides. So,
That's fair.
um
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
oh, no, you're fine. Let's see. So once we determine everything looks good, like I said, we have the Zoom call with our borrower, and once that's done, then we let them know basically you've passed our process. Either at that time, if we have the funds in house and we decide we're going to fund, then we'll move it along. If we decide that we'll seek funding, we'll let them know basically this is our process. This is what we're going to charge for packaging this up, marketing it, bringing in a capital partner for you, and then we'll start marketing it to our base of funding partners. Sometimes we know looking at the deal, we're like, oh, this would be perfect for so and so. And there has been times that we have not put it out to our complete list and just reached out to the person that we thought it would be a good fit for. So that happens. Most cases, we can have funding secured anywhere from 24 to 72 hours. It depends on several things, and that's, the numbers on the deal, the how attractive it is to our funding partners at the time, and of course, how much money they currently have out or available.
Right.
So so once we find a funding partner, secure the funding, we have a great transaction coordinator that we work with on all of our transactions. And so, we hand off the information to her that's needed and pull in our funding partners, borrower, and TC team to get all the documents created and ready for closing.
Nice. So they take care of all the paperwork while you start looking for more deals, right?
Pretty much. We lucked out. So I really struggled with that because we used a couple transaction coordinators in the beginning, and it just wasn't the greatest fit, and so I got frustrated, and I did a lot of our own TC work just because I didn't like how it was being done, and I didn't feel like it was a good use of my time or my money to have somebody do it, and I struggled with it, and,
Sure.
I lucked out, and I found the right fit for our business, and now I wouldn't do anything without her because she allows me to really, streamline, and I know that my paperwork is done right, and then we're good at because not only does she handle taking care of my joint venture agreements for us, she also, consults with a legal assistant to help with our, um, mortgage notes and deed of trust and promissory note, everything that we need there, and, you can have title companies do those for you. However, we have found that most of the time that happens, 1, they're slow, and 2, there's usually a lot of mistakes.
Yep.
So,
So back onto the lending. What kind of lending do you do? I mean, there's several types. So do you limit yourself to one specific type, or do you lend on all types of lending? And kind of elaborate on that.
yeah, what we have focused on, we've done a lot of what I would consider gap funding. So if somebody comes, they've got the hard money loan secured, but they need additional funds for either a portion of the rehab or down payment or closing cost. So when we first started, that was pretty much all we did was the gap funding, which usually is secured with a second lien position, typically a higher interest rate or typical return. We have kind of pivoted a lot and we do a lot of first lien positions right now. And again, they're short term. Right now, we're trying to stay 6 months and under in most of the things that we do. But we're looking at and really working on, how can we provide longer term? And when I say longer term, like, 12 months. So
Sure.
that'll probably be something we dive into quite a bit in 2025 is offering more of that.
So on your 6 month term, do you offer an option to extend, or are you right now you're kind of stuck on the 6 months and will kind of
Y-
test for 12
Yeah,
months next year?
we right now we did one that was like for 10 months. But mostly, yeah, it's mostly 6 months. And we hadn't been doing the option to extend it. But I definitely I have seen a need for, a little bit more flexibility and not necessarily the real stringent short term. And so I want to start offering more of those. We've also pivoted, I wouldn't say pivoted, we've added transactional funding. So we do a lot of transactional funding too. And some people, I think everyone has kind of a different view on what transactional funding is because I know some people have looked at transactional as like 30 days. For us, our transactional is basically, I'd say the max would be 72 hours. And
Right,
typically with our transactional funding, our funds never leave title. So
right.
the goal of our transactional funding is to help you, get in and resell that property quickly. We have done some situations where we've been able to structure it properly, where we've been able to help somebody that's buying, say they're doing part of it on owner finance. So, and then the part of it on a loan, we've been able to come in and provide that upfront down payment funding for that. And then the owner carryback portion gets applied and we get our funds back. So I guess you would call that kind of like a reverse Morby method, I think is that we've done that
The reverse,
several
I was gonna
times.
say it's the Morby method is what I call
Yeah,
it.
well, maybe it is.
Reverse
Yeah,
from that.
maybe not reverse, but yeah, we've done that several times, and we have figured out how to do that for people, and so it's like, okay, we can offer this if you're doing it this way, and it's been good. So I actually really like the transactional funding. Our funding partners that work with us on that like that too because it's a quick turn of their money.
So let me ask you this, because I'm in a community that with a whole bunch of lenders, and the way they do transactional funding is when somebody applies, they make sure that they have that end buyer already lined up. They have
Yes.
that B2C contract, so that way you kind of almost have a little bit more security and comfort, right? That peace of mind that when you wire that money to title, it'll come. It's
Mhm.
maybe the same day transaction, right? If funds, it gets the job done, and then they turn around and send you your money probably within a
Yep.
couple of hours.
Yep. 100%. In fact, we had one today and I need to check, but I think it turned in like 4 hours. I think we had it there and
Nice.
back. But, yeah, for us, I mean, that's very critical. I actually, confirm that the end funds are in escrow before we send any wires. So there's, it's very safe for, ourselves when we're putting the money up and for any of our funding partners when we ask them to put the money up because the money that's required to pay them back is already there.
Right.
So,
That's the best way of doing it. The best
oh,
way
it
I've
is.
learned to mitigate risk, right?
Oh, 100%. And I'd also recommend though when, if you're doing something like that, one key that we have found is the right title companies and contacts too. So, if you're, looking to provide that service, make sure you have a good relationship with the title escrow agents so that they know, they understand the process because not
Right.
everyone does. So
It's where your TC comes in really handy.
so I actually have not turned our transactional funding pieces over to our TC yet.
Okay.
So that is something that I'm still babysitting all of those. She's in training for them though, because we've been doing more volume of those. So I definitely need to start handing those over. But yeah, I'm still managing that piece right now.
So, um, you say that you joint venture when you lend sometimes if your money is deployed. What kind of rates do you charge a borrower so that you get a little bit of piece of the pie and also pay back your person that you're borrowing from, basically?
Yeah. So we've structured it a handful of different ways. I mean, we've structured it where the entire return would go to our funding partner and we would just take an upfront, capital liaison fee. So we've done that. We've also done where, our borrower offered us enough of a return that we basically shared that with the funding partner. So we said, okay, and I'm just throwing out numbers. So say they offered a 25% return and we said, okay, well, we'll give this to our funding partner for 15% and we'll take 10%. So we've done it that way as well. And we
And you've
also
had equity in deals.
we have done equity in deals as well. So yes, that's another option too. So we have taken, we said, okay, instead of taking, capital liaison fees, instead of taking a return, give us 10% in the property. So I actually like to do more of those in 2025 because we need to start building up, what we own as far as the properties. So, but there's so many different ways to structure it. And I think the biggest thing is, one for us, we want to protect our funding partners because there's a lot of people out there that would love to have their money working for them, but
Right.
they're a little nervous and afraid. They've never done it. And so we want to be that resource of, hey, yes, I feel comfortable working with CPI transactions because I know that they do, this to make sure that the deal is good before we put our money into it. So, we really try hard to do that and just a win-win. So we win, so we are compensated for our time and value of putting things together, but they also have a really nice return. And our borrower too. I mean, this has allowed a lot of our borrowers to really start scaling their operations where they couldn't before.
That's awesome. So, like I told you before, this is called the good, bad, and ugly. And you kind of hitting on a couple of stories, but do you have any ones that are like really like, oh my god, let me tell you this good story, and
Oh,
oh my god, let me tell you this horror nightmare.
yeah. I mean, we did really good. We had like perfect track record, I'd say for year and 9 months, maybe even longer. And then we've had a couple of roadblocks and bumps. I would say, we've had a couple of our good borrowers that have just been much later than anticipated, and I think they ran into some scaling issues. So we've had to step back and say, okay, how can we help you streamline better? How can we make sure that your exit strategy is a little bit better so that we don't have these delays?
Mhm.
So that's one thing. I do have a situation right now, and luckily they're first lien. It's a first lien position, but potentially we may be going through, some takeover of the property on that. But for us, I mean, when we put together a deal, we will do absolutely everything in our power to, make sure that our funding partner is secured. And if there are roadblocks, we'll do everything in our power to help, communicate, help advise as much as we can, direct them to resources to make sure that things get closed out the way that they need to be.
Awesome. So you already know that you're a lender, so that's kind of what you have to offer other people. If somebody wanted a JV with you, what kind of needs do you have to help you in your business?
Um, I'm always looking for good, strong funding partners that are looking to deploy capital. Um, I think that would be something that we're always looking for because we want to scale. We want to be able to do more and offer more. And the more capital we have, the more we can do that. So, we've often taken anywhere from 2 to 4 people and put them together in a project if it was a higher amount so that, we could get it done. It also allows, say, a new funding partner that may not have a ton to invest to kind of dip their toe in without breaking the bank. So it's a good way to do that. So I'm always looking for that. I've also joint ventured with people that have said, "Hey, I have this borrower and I don't know how to get his project funded." If it's a good project and it passes our evaluation, I'd be happy to work with the person that brought it to me to get that funded for them through our network and then share a capital liaison fee with them.
Awesome. So now everybody knows you, right? They know you're good, you're bad, you're ugly, you kind of your criteria of lending. If they're a new investor or even a seasoned investor and they wanted to use CPI for their funding for their next project, how would they get a hold of you?
Honestly, probably the best way would be to visit our website, which is www.cpitransactions.com. And on there, we've got contact forms. You can text us. You can submit your deals. You can submit a chat. So that'd probably be the best way to get a hold of us.
And just for the audience, that link to their website will be in the description. So
Thank you.
if you didn't write it down when she said it, it'll just look at the description and click on it and reach out to Stephanie. She'll help you get into your next deal, and by default, will actually teach or help you avoid getting into a bad deal because once she underwrites it and says this doesn't work for her, you may learn something about underwriting and prevent yourself from getting into a deal that may have otherwise been a very painful and expensive learning lesson.
Right. I do want to add one thing to that. I mean, we do as much due diligence as we can on our end, but we always want to encourage anyone that is getting ready to get into a deal to always do your own due diligence too. I mean, I've seen a lot of funding partners, none of ours, but I have seen funding partners that have just jumped into a deal because somebody told them it was a good deal and it ended up not being. So whenever you're going to invest your money, please take time to do your own due diligence so that you feel comfortable. And I also want to put out there too that one thing that we do is, sometimes you'll have a gut feeling, Jose. I mean, sometimes there's just something that you can't put
Put
your
your finger on.
finger on it. I,
Yeah.
I I had that actually. I had a case where everything looked good on paper, looked good. The call with the borrower looked good, and I just kept saying, I'm like, "There's something off, but I don't know what it is." And I went back through. We were planning on funding it, and I was like, "I just can't figure out what it is." And I went back through and I like checked all his properties that he owned, and one had gone into started the foreclosure process like within a week after we first started looking at it. And then when I
Oh,
dug into it, it was new and he hadn't paid. And I was like, okay, I found it. So trust your gut. Always trust your gut.
I
Don't
had a
ignore it.
I had a guy submit to my website for funding, and he submitted the same thing 4 times. I'm like, what is going on here? Come to find out, he wasn't even the borrower. He was somebody who was trying to get funding for somebody else. And every
Gotcha.
time I would reach out to him and say, "Did you make sure that you uploaded all your documents?" And so because he wanted a quick turnaround, he wanted like it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. He needed to do it by close of business.
Oh,
And I
no.
let him and I let him know. I said, number one, that's going to be a higher fee because you're asking us to jump through hoops to make this happen.
Right.
We with my network, we advertise we can close in an hour, or we can fund in an hour as
Right.
long as we have everything that we need to make a decision. I won't say we will fund it, but you give
Yep.
us everything to make a decision on, and if it's something that we would lend on, within an hour it can be funded and be able to close that deal. But yeah, we're like, why is this going on with this guy? And come to find out that, yeah, he wasn't even the end borrower. And the website literally says the person that's actually borrowing the funds needs to fill this stuff out. So
Yeah, there's
talk about six senses. That's it.
you have to follow it, and it's sad because there are a lot of scammers out there, and you're not always going to be immune to them, but just be very careful, do your due diligence, just really dig. And that's one thing that we really try to do is really dig and ask as many questions. Um, do as much digging on the web as you can, checking with others. There's a lot of information out there that you can find that will help you feel good or say, nope, hard pass.
Well, like you said, references are always good. Past experience or past performance usually predicts future performance
Yep.
in most cases.
Not always, but most
So,
cases, yes. I mean, most
so
cases it does. So yeah. So, but
stuff. I appreciate you coming on my podcast. This was episode number 4, so you were my 4th guest, and I thank
thank
you from the
you.
bottom of my heart for being on here with me. I'm looking forward to continue working with you and hopefully closing some deals and
Yes,
venturing outside just lending. We're going to try to do some mobile home park repairs and purchases, and,
definitely.
expand our horizons. So I look forward to working with that. Uh, for the audience, thank you for tuning in. We'll be bringing more of good, bad, and ugly of different aspects of real estate. And check the description for cpitransactions.com and have Stefanie help you with your next project. Stefanie,
All
it
right.
was great. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jose. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.